Happy to see everyone. And I would love anyone to interrupt with questions at any time. Okay, so I'm going to just start out. I uh, I was not an educator when I came to Saturday Academy, and I have taught a lot of girls, and I have learned a lot of things. So I'd like to pass them on. Um, uh, I counted up just for my leaving 1,900 girls in all girl classes and about 900 students in co-ed classes. And those were mostly in schools. So they were 50 girls and boys. The age range is 2nd to 8th grade, mostly 4th to 6th. So we're talking 10 to 12 years old. All right. And everything in here, I apologize to anyone who is an actual educator. You may have learned this in like 1st grade, but these are the things that I learned. Yes, the age range, one of the things I learned in the 1st year, I stopped offering programming classes to 2nd graders. My goal is always 100% success rate. And when I analyzed the people who truly were unsuccessful, not just annoyed or had a stomach ache, but really couldn't do it, they were all 2nd graders. Now, most 2nd graders could do the work, but some of them, their frustration level was too short. And some of them literally couldn't read enough to find the commands when I said, find a command that says show. Someone said, I don't really read that well. So I thought, you should come back next year. It's really worse to give something to kids that they can't do than to not give it at all. Okay, so I was an engineer for 25 years at Intel, and I have that lived experience that more girl engineers are needed. This is a particularly fond term for me because my first male boss always introduced me as, this is my girl engineer. And my colleagues were all, this is Dr. Ma, this is Dr. Johnson. Yeah, okay. But these ones, 10 to 12-year-olds, are really girls. And I always start our class by saying, we're going to practice being engineers today. Of course, outside of my own lived experience, there is lots of data that said more diverse teams are more creative, they can be more productive. Anyway, so I had this passion for girls. When I took early retirement, I became a social venture partner at Saturday Academy, and my project was to create a girls program. And I honestly thought it would be in science. The last time I was looking at data, I was in undergraduate, and we were on the cusp. We were the generation that was going to balance everything. But I looked at data from the 2000s and found out that many STEM fields have actually achieved gender parity. But engineering and computing is stuck at 19%. And so I decided I was teaching programming. And I must say, I was disappointed, but it was fun after all. All right, so here's the data. There's lots of ways to measure women's participation. The women in the workforce is something that's used, but I think that one is a metric that's too hard to change. There's lots of people who are 40 years old and they're not going to quit for 20 years. So I like to use the number of bachelor's degrees. So this is from 2001 to 2015. Psychology, 80% female. I think that's a problem. I have a son who needs a counselor and he likes male counselors. But anyway, I have no passion to solve that problem. Biological sciences, more than 50% women. The average is 50. Math is close to 50. Chemistry, material science, a lot of them are right in here, 50%. But down on the bottom, here's computer science, and it dropped from close to 30 to less than 20. And what blows my brain out is 1985, a few years after I had my bachelor's degree, it was 36% of the computer science degrees were female. And that's just crazy that it's dropped so far. So that's the problem statement. That's why the data that says we're doing something wrong with girls to get them into computer science. Of course, we don't need everyone to have a computer science degree, but these kids, they need to know how to make computers do things. Professionals in their lifetime have no option. And a lot of girls are opting out for no good reason. Okay, so I did research. I started by reading what people were doing and the methods for best teaching. But these methods are useful for reaching any student who isn't certain of success, including children who don't get good grades, who don't know any engineers, who have no computers at home, or children that just feel they don't belong in this group. So I'm going to talk about girls, but the same methods can be used for other children. So here's some results from the research. And I've condensed them down and I took out most of the references, but here we go. Increased post-assessment of knowledge in programming correlated with an increase in confidence in succeeding. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. If you know something about it, you have a personal idea that you have a better chance to succeed. This one is not straightforward. Students with programming experience are more confident and more successful in introductory courses in college than their inexperienced peers and more likely to persist. So of course that means our introductory college courses are not doing a job. If you're introductory and you can't persist unless you already know something, that's a big miss there. And then it's very well documented that girls spend less time on the computer, and they use it in different ways. They use it more for communication, chatting, and the games that are targeted for boys often have things that you can mod. So boys or kids who like these games get practice with programming, and girls do not. And then they get to college and they're out of it before they start. Okay, so the program that I started was called Girls Engage Technology, and the goal is to provide positive engineering experiences. And when I describe this to the teens that I train to help me, I always say it has to be both positive and an engineering experience. We're not there to sing Kumbaya and everyone's happy and everyone's smart. We're going to make them do it, and then they're going to like it. And it works. All right, confidence through competence. And we lower the barriers to participation. If you go in high school classes, they are mostly boys. And it hasn't changed very much, although there are more high school classes in programming than there used to be. The lower the barriers of cost. So these classes are supported by grants and free to all girls. Lower the barrier location. I had mobile units of laptops, and I visited your girls in church basements and after school clubs and lots of places. And intimidation, lower the barrier of intimidation, taught in all girl groups. The target age is pre-middle school with a small number of teens as near peer mentors. And there's a lot of research that show students choose their identity, narrow their interests in middle school, and a lot of girls just decide they're not interested in tech. That's not who they are. and it's not based on data. So the least we can do is get them some data and they can say, really, I don't like this. That's at least a better decision. And the high school students, of course, are determining college major and career. Okay, so we know we need skills. We're going to have hands-on classes. That's what Saturday Academy does. And I taught my classes, and the girls had fun, and there was giggles, and they wrote programs, and then a reality check. I knew I didn't know what I was doing exactly, so I gave pre-assessments and post-assessments. And darn it, if some of these little girls didn't have a post-assessment, when I had watched them write a computer program and it worked and they showed it off, and then they said, no, I haven't written a computer program. So just because you say it, just because you teach it, doesn't mean they get it. These are young kids, right? So never underestimate the power of just saying it out loud and then saying it again and then saying it in a different way. So the teens and I started working on verbalizing the accomplishment. What an interesting program you wrote. That program has never been written by anyone before. You're a programmer now. Okay, so we said that. And those no's went away. Everyone leaving with a few. Every now and then we have someone who's just has a stomach ache or something. Another feature from the research is that many girls like to build things, but they don't see themselves as engineers. So I say, bring in the teens. When I'm talking to 10-year-olds, they aren't necessarily thinking of careers. I can say, I was an engineer, I had this great job, I think you would like it too, we need more girl brains. I can say all that, but they're 10. But if you bring in some near peer mentors, like Izzy over here and Alex, then those 10-year-olds can imagine themselves being in high school, right? So they look up to these girls, and these girls say, I wrote this program to do this, or Izzy over here, this was for product design, where we did wearable electronics, little wires and LEDs, we did it all by hand. And she built this table, and the back is switches, and you can turn them on and off and give each other messages. And the little girls loved it. They just crawled all over it. So Izzy brought this to our classes, and she did it for her physics class, and she got an A on it. And this made an impression that nothing I could say. I could be their grandma. I could be these little girls' grandma. And Izzy has a different voice than I do. So that works well. Research, again, children's beliefs about abilities are central to determining their interests. And this study was on both gender. And I'm thinking you could take out children and just say people beliefs. If you think you're good at something, you're probably interested in it. So beliefs in ability. And here is a huge gender disparity. I showed this picture because this is not programming. This is physical outdoor running, right? This is from a fun run in our neighborhood. And as you can see in the front, all boys in the front. And they are all absolutely certain they're going to win this race. This one is my son, so that's why I have this picture. And he was determined. He'd never run this distance before, but he's an active kid. He felt how hard can it be, right? I can totally do this. And his friend from soccer, they were out there together. You know, we can do it. Well, they didn't do it. And the winner was actually Brendan over here, who had run a lot with his dad. Second was this little girl in the pink hat. You know, look at that determined smile, but she's not in the front. She's not saying, I can do this, get out of my way. She's just going to be quiet about it. and get the job done. So here's a study that said girls with higher levels of experience in programming reported higher levels of confidence than those without experience. But boys reported being confident regardless of experience. I just I just love that. And honestly, it applies to at least one of my sons. And of course, when I say girls and when I say boys, I absolutely know that there's a huge distribution, but there is real distance between the medians. And when you're in the classroom, you can see it. Equal competence does not guarantee equal confidence. Here's another great study. This was AP computer classes in which the grades for the girls were statistically higher. But when they're surveyed, 65% of the boys said, my computing skills are more advanced than the girls, while 19% of girls who had more skills claimed their skills were more advanced than the boys. So competence, confidence does not depend on competence, it depends more on gender. But we can change that. We can increase the confidence of all kids. We don't want to make boys less confident. That's not the way to get there. Okay, so we want methods for increasing confidence. And so different studies say different things, but girls in all girl classes had higher confidence in their skill than girls in mixed gender classes. And this was from a really nice paired comparison of high school students in programming classes of different kinds. I think that the social system in high school is tough no matter what. And it could be that these girls were in the minority in their classes. And it could be that they have a lot of smack talk from the boys. Another thing for increasing confidence is to deliberately, and we as teachers can do this, discourage students from intimidating others by showing off their knowledge. And you probably know this if you've taught. It's hard if you have one kid who really knows a lot about it and everyone else is a beginner. That kid doesn't have to be a boy, but you need to keep saying that you've done this before, you have the experience. And so everyone understands that if you do more, you know more. And it's not that he has ultimate interior abilities that you don't have. Teach that our abilities are expendable. I say this all the time. Engineers say it doesn't work yet. We know it will work, but it's not working yet. You're not allowed in this class to just say it doesn't work. And then the next one is to not confuse innate ability with prior experience. Probably no one has an innate ability in programming. We didn't evolve with that kind of need. Then we want to add specific praise for actions. We do not assign smartness. You don't say, wow, you have a real knack for that. Sandy, there is someone in the waiting room. That you can say, you have defined that problem perfectly, and that makes it easier to solve. Or I watched you try at least 5 conditions before selecting. That's a great method. If you compliment them on what they've done right, they feel that they know what to do. If you say, you are so smart, you got that done, then when they can't figure something out, it's obviously that I'm not that smart. Okay. Girls have more of a tendency to ask for help. And some girls ask for adult rescue, and they ask a lot. And this is hard to resist, but you have to let them do it by themselves. At the end of the class, the girl must feel that the product is her own work. So there's a lot of ways to address this, but you have to resist giving them the answer and giving them enough clues to work it out. Another study or set of studies said that perceived support from teachers and peers correlated to girls' interest in computing classes. And again, it's not the things that you might think you're giving support, but it has to be perceived by the girl. And it said that if you are a trusted person, like a teacher or instructor, and you recommend that the girls take another computer class, it was effective. It had almost no effect on boys, but the girls listened to the people in authority over them. I have not data, but an anecdote of a couple I know from Puerto Rico, and they both wanted to be in engineering. They both liked to build things, and they both were told that they weren't smart enough to be an engineer. Their math wasn't good enough. They weren't smart enough. Find something else. And the woman became a Spanish teacher, and she's a great teacher, and the students are lucky to have her. And the man said, to hell with him, I'll show him, and became an engineer. So there you go. The advice works differently for girls and boys, and support from an expert, a perceived expert, matters a lot to girls. Methods for increasing confidence. So these are things from my own experience, not from the research that I read. Regular demonstrations. Have every girl show her work and role model praising specific components of that work. You can always find something that is interesting or unique or creative or works really well. And some girls don't want to show their work, especially if it's not perfect yet. I have demonstrations midpoint and at the end of the class. At the end of the class, the parents are usually there, and they are invited to watch the presentations. And some girls really need to be encouraged. You know, I think your program's very interesting, and all the other girls would like to see it. And some girls refuse, and I let them after I give a couple tries, but very few. Usually they like it. I do not allow sharing to the worldwide Scratch community within the class. So I teach all Scratch classes. These are beginners. It's the perfect system. But one time I allowed the class, I don't even know why, to convince me to turn on sharing. And the rest of the class, every girl was counting how many likes they had. And instead of being proud that they wrote a computer program that they'd never written before, they were all competing on how many likes they got. And that's not happening again. So I turned the sharing off, and I control the accounts because I create the accounts. They're all made with my email address. And if they want another account, their parent has to create it for them. Each girl has to have her own computer and make her own decisions. So there's a lot of research papers that said girls like to work together, pair them up, and they will do better work. And I tried this. I thought, hey, we need half as many computers. That's a great deal. But I tried this, and I found only one girl who was really, really timid wanted to be a pair, and she just sat there and watched the other girl. So that's most of the girls, when there was a decision to be made, they wanted to make it, and that's the way it should be. So every girl has her own computer, makes her own decisions, writes her own program. Okay, so when it gets to the mechanics of the class, I was a long time coming to this, but I am a true convert. I am so excited about the interesting things I can teach those girls that I want to just rush in and say, we only have 3 hours and let's get started now. But it matters if you start out and try to build a community. Sometimes the girls know each other, but a lot of times they don't. And we're going to spend 3 hours together in a small room. We need to at least feel some comfort with each other. So introductions are important. And I have also been convinced that you need to say some personal things about yourself to make engineers seem human, right? Um, so I'd say that I'm a retired engineer. I loved my career. I did fabulous, interesting thing. And I have 3 kids and a dog, and I wear pink. Those things are not opposite ideas. And then I asked them, what is engineering? And the answers have really improved since I started in 2014. They're teaching more engineering in schools. They really are. And so I usually get answers like building, solving problems, making things work. And then I use that direct set. I say, we need more engineers with girl brains. And I sometimes whisper and I say, don't tell your little brothers. But can you imagine if all the people of the next generation deciding what problems need to be solved are your little brothers? That gets a laugh because everyone has or many of them have little brothers who run around trying to break things. So uh, I don't expect them to pick it up by osmosis. I just put it out there. And we are practicing being software engineers today. Then I tell some true stories of robots at work. I have a couple of really good ones. One from the olden days when we made wafers, and we had, this was never my job, but vats of literally boiling sulfuric acid, and we had people whose job was to dip silicon wafers into them and leave them for a certain amount of time and then pull them up. And it was a nasty job, and it could be dangerous, and you had to it was boring and it was repetitive and it smelled bad, all these things. And robots at work took over that job. So now we have jobs for people who build robots and program robots and fix robots and know how to make better robots. And I have actually had girls tell me when I start talking about robots, they say robots are bad, they take jobs away from people. Never underestimate what these kids can be thinking, right? So she has a point, but I was making a different point. So I say robots take care of work that we don't want to do, work that we can't do, walking on the bottom floor of the ocean. And I talk about robots in hospitals. There's one that rolls in and squirts hydrogen peroxide steam around the hospital room. No living thing can be inside. So a person couldn't do that. And then it all decomposes to water and oxygen, and the room is far cleaner than it could be with liquid solvents. So a lot of yes, 90% of girls who were interested in STEM consider that helping people, making a difference in the world are important in choosing their career path. And another study done by Microsoft was that more girls, when they come into the field, I think these were college students, checked off the boxes that they want to make things better, do things for people. And the boys came into the field because they loved playing computer games. So there you go. We need to make the technology, we need to describe it in ways that girls understand as being valuable. They can do the work. They totally can do the work. They just need to want to do the work. And then they need to be confident that they can do the work. And again, teen introductions are golden because, again, I can talk about engineering, but these girls are not planning their careers yet. Although some of them are thinking about it. And here's some pictures, all these words, right? I got to put the pictures in. These are the high school. I have to point out the high schoolers helping the girls. Here's Alyssa and Maya and Corinne. Actually, 3 of these became ACE interns, and they had a good time helping the girls. We would have conferences about how to improve the classes and how we could reach them better, and how we could, we had developed some methods for measuring the complexity of the code, and then trying different things to see if we could improve the complexity, the average complexity. We gave up on that because the biggest variable was what they started knowing. So, okay, for my programming class, I think this is probably the same as other people, but I wanted to write it down. I select an open-ended project with specific programming goals. And this is not a game. Girls love to write games, and they should do one after they start. But if it's truly their very first program, then it needs to have a lot of ending points that could be considered successful. With a game, it either works or it doesn't work. And if you get really, 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 really close, but it doesn't work, it's not going to feel as good. So you should have all the goals up there. And I work with Girl Scouts, so they have badges. And I tell them all these goals are required for the badge. That's a little bit of a fudge, but the general idea is the same. So I have them write a story with at least 3 characters, and then I always stop and say, does that mean 4 characters okay? And never underestimate saying it again and again. Each character has motion and conversation and begins when the green flag is clicked, and backdrops and sounds and loops. Then, depending on the group, we do conditional clauses or XY coordinates with the game. But I generally don't get to XY coordinates in a single 3-hour class. But if you're teaching a series of 3-hour classes, that's good. The game is to just make a big, take your masking tape and put a coordinate system on the floor and have girls go to 2,2 and 3,1 and body motion. And some classes will go farther than others depending on what they're starting with. Then I give a very short hands-on tutorial. Do this with me. I don't talk too much. I want them to get working on their own as fast as possible. Whoops. Let's see. There we go. Well, all right. Success is that every girl completes the programming goals and has a working product she's proud of. And I have to put in this girl's face because she is so proud. This was one girl from my pilot program, and she was in an after-school class for in a Title I school, and she only spoke Arabic, and I speak no Arabic. But she got a program that made that school bus tumble and fall into the soccer goal. And she was enormously proud of that program. So there we go. Proud face. Going on. Short introduction. Do this with me, but I make them log in so they can do it at home. I make them new accounts so they can have that home. They have to type in their own username and password. They have to plug in the mouse. They have to find the USB port. You would be surprised how many just stop and ask for help. And I'm like, there's only a few holes and only one of them fits. You go ahead and find it. When we do circuits too, they have to be encouraged, but they really love wire strippers. I mean, doing things with their hands, they need a little more practice. So we write our first program. When the green flag is clipped and move and conversation, and I say the white ovals are variables. Say it with me. And if they don't, I keep saying till they say it loudly. And that's one of the vocabulary words I want to stick, right? Test the program. Engineers always test their changes and then switch the positions and have her talk first and move second. And that's a different program. And of course, that's a basic. If they don't get that concept, you're in trouble. But this quick success of making the kitty cat move and talk wins over some anxious kids. And I think this is really important. If you can get them to a success in the first 5 minutes, you got them hooked, right? Don't talk a long time. Don't do a long thing. Just get that little kitty cat moving. And they often are just so excited, right? And then make them practice and have the cat go to California and backward and forward and the whole idea. Then we look at characters and backgrounds, and every girl decides on the story that she wants to write. And I always explain that we're not writing novels, not 700 pages of Harry Potter, but a story like the butterfly is looking for a friend, and she looks in the flower garden, and she looks in the desert, and she looks in the jungle, and then she finds, well, whoever she finds, that's your choice, right? You want ownership. You want the girls to feel like they own this program. And of course, this works for boys too, but it is especially impactful for girls who will follow along a script, but they get really excited when they can influence the topic. When they're writing about unicorns, I had no idea how popular unicorns were with 10-year-old girls, but now I know. Okay. And it's good that I let them pick, because I would be very bad at knowing what interests 10-year-old girls. Even when I was 10-year-old, I probably wouldn't pick things that would interest a lot of 10-year-old girls. So I have no chance right now. And this is a note that was written from a mom. And she said, my daughter has had past experiences with Hour of Code, a few other coding games, but nothing like this. She was so excited and happy that she was able to design and create her own game instead of coding the movements of predetermined game layouts, which never held her attention long term. So that's right. If you like it, you'll work on it harder and longer. And what is astonishing to me, every time you get 10 girls in a room and you give them all the same goals, and they come up with 20 different stories, or maybe not 20. But anyway, so here's some, there's one, I had to put one unicorn in because unicorns are very popular. So at the halfway point, every girl gives a demonstration, and then we take a break and we move. And when we're in the Girl Scout Center, I have them run up the stairs, run around the kitchen, run through the big room upstairs, and run downstairs again. And then we play the Programmer Says game. And this game is conditional clauses. We stand in the biggest room we can get in, and I say, if you are in fourth grade, then jump up and down 5 times. And if you like to play animal, oh dear, I forgot what it is. Animal Party, Animal Screen, whatever that game is. Then do 3 jumping jacks. So, and then every girl gets to take a term as a programmer to be the programmer who says, if then. After the break, then we will do some programming with if then clauses if they're ready for it. After the break, we always animate the ballerina and add background music. They can add the animation into their story or not, but they know how to do it. And then we have the demonstrations again at the end. And the demonstrations are hugely popular and they're very cute. So I have to show you some girls involved in demonstrations. It's more powerful if you can have a room where you display it on the wall and everyone looks at it and the girl comes to the front of the room and says, what's happening, what she's going to do next. Maybe she fills in some background about why they're doing this or not. But often we're just gathered around the laptop there. And there's a lot of giggles. When I say positive experience, I mean it. I work a lot with Girl Scouts. These girls are a little calmer, but they're also interested. They're a little older too. It's harder to get middle school girls giggling. So all of those methods for increasing confidence, I had 6 pages or something. I only have one for making more complex programs. Praise the experimentation. Some smart girls hate to make mistakes, and you gotta let them know that it's all about trying things, and they're not really mistakes, they're just experiments. And emphasize the ownership, role model optimization. We did 2 things that were tested to make more complex programs, have the girls write higher complex programs. One of them was at the demo, the teen sits down and writes a program that includes one thing that nobody else's code has used yet, maybe a broadcast message, whatever, and shows it off. And because the girls look at those teens differently, everyone wants to put that in. They say, I could do that. I want to put that in my code. And when we did the same command, but in a different class, so there's a lot of variables there. And I just explained it, how to do it and how it would be great. 0 kids adopted it. So there you go. And one time a teen demonstrated her program. And of course, they make very simple programs. They're not trying to show up the girls. They're just trying to encourage them. And there was a mistake in the program. I don't know, the unicorn went the wrong way or something. And she was the perfect teen and she wasn't a bear. She said, I know how to fix that. And in real time, she fixed it. And that made such a big impact on the girls. It was just the perfect role modeling experience. I also try to teach the teens and myself to say the word she for every non-gendered character. And even for me, it's hard to do. We're just automatically programmed to say he if you don't know. So here's some quotes that talks about societal pressure. This one was in my first year. My friend Mark, he's a boy, she pointed that out, said, I just couldn't learn Scratch, but I just did. She was gonna shove it in his face. And then there's one that said, I didn't really want to come, but my friend Dana came, so I did too. Can I sign up for the next class? So a little peer pressure, bring your friend to work day. That's a good thing. And then there's a too many moms who said things like, I had no idea she would like programming. I'm like, oh, don't say that. Sometimes I had to ask the moms to leave because they would say things like, wow, this is really complicated. And I didn't want the girls hearing that message because really. So that's programming. And lots and lots of girls wrote programs and they had a good time and they did it afterwards. I sometimes did follow-up studies and they were still using the accounts that I created for them. Not all of them did. And the newest thing is robots, Sphero robots. And boy, these are really popular. We started in 2020, the fall, and then COVID came and we didn't do any. You have to be there because the robots have to be charged. They have to keep their Bluetooth connection with the controller. And you're just never going to teach a 9-year-old not to be frustrated with that. But we did have all of the programming classes were completely full and they were they were very, very popular. You get 10 girls chasing robots around a big room. It's a fun thing. And the robots, so of my post assessments, I did not get very high scores. Well, the robots did the best with, I am the kind of person who could be an engineer, went from 74 to 94%. Of course, it's high because they came to this class voluntarily. But 94% of the girls saying that is a good result. And it was very popular. They all wanted to come back and bring this friend. And there's no pre-question about coming to this class again. Okay, so what is the impact? Of course, we don't know we don't do longevity studies, but the goal is that every girl is successful at learning new skills, that she has confidence based on competence to take the next step in engineering learning. And we did 1,903 girls served through Girls Engaged Technology. And Saturday Academy for 2019, our open enrollment STEM classes had 318 more boys than girls, but GET had 357, so we're at parity. And thanks.